I'm your host, Sherry Stewart, and I'm joined with my co-host, Jamila Najade.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I have to say the word excited if it's me, but yeah, hello.
So glad to have you here. And we're also joined by our guest, Robert Angus.
Hello. Yeah, I'm also very excited to be here. I'm a huge fan of the podcast, so it was really, really exciting for me to get the invitation.
Excellent. On our podcast, we like to talk about the games that we've played in the last month. So, Jamie, why don't you start us off with the games you've played, both on and off Gauntlet?
Sure. So I've had a few games off the Gauntlet. When I get to on the Gauntlet games, it's going to be kind of embarrassing. But off Gauntlet, I talk about it all the time, but I've played Brindlewood, and I've also played In the Face of Our Despair, which is my Brindlewood fan game, and Hearts of Wulin.
Always a good one.
Yeah, it was super great. We did a sci-fi version, which just makes sense.
Oh.
Yeah. I feel like Star Wars feels like Hearts of Wulin, so It makes a lot of sense. And then what I played on the Gauntlet, that's a long list. So on the Gauntlet, I played L'Oracle de Revolution, which is a game that's currently being playtested. It's currently being worked on by Sam, who's also a Gauntleteer. I also played Go by Moonlight, specifically the In a Maze of Dreams playset. So the more serial experiments lean version of things. And I also played Changeling the Lost, the PPTA hack by Lo, which changed my life. And I also got to play Trophy Gold, Pasión de los Pasiones, Angels of the Arcana, Bite Marks, Balikbayan, Neo Shinobi Vendetta, Once More Into the Void, Bluebeard's Bride, Brindlewood Bay, #iHut, Apocalypse World, and Oathbreakers.
Wow, okay. Impressive list. So, which one are you going to talk about today?
So I'm going to talk about Oathbreakers to get deeper into it. It is a game that is inspired by 90s Vertigo comics and the urban fantasy genre. It's a belonging outside belonging game. What that means, belonging outside belonging is a system that was developed by Benjamin Rosenbaum and Avery Alder through Dream Askew and Dream Apart. And it's a really exciting system. It's very different. It was born from the bones of Powered by the Apocalypse from Apocalypse World per se, but from there it's really different because it's a token-based economy. There are no dice, and in the original system there are no masters either. I hack it a little bit and put in a GM that's optional if you like. And it's so interesting because the players have to perform weak moves on purpose in order for them to get any token so they can do their stronger moves. And in Oathbreakers, I took it a step further by removing the regular moves, because I noticed when I run Balikbayan, I have some players who just sort of stay in the regular move section and they don't want to move. And I saw Riley Rethal, she's been making games where she removes the regular moves entirely from her BOB games, and I was like, I want to see how that works. That sounds really interesting. And to another step forward, because I got the idea from Sam Zimmerman when I played L'Oracle de Revolution. I was so blown away on the Gauntlet because instead of tokens, he has tarot cards, and each tarot card gets you a different move. So if you have a sword card, you can do this move. If you have a pentacles card, you can do that move. And I was like, oh, I love this. My tarot geeky heart is so happy with this idea. So I asked Sam, can I steal it and put it in my game?
Awesome.
Yeah, so the tone of Oathbreakers is, it's very gritty, it's surreal, grounded, fantastical. Earlier today, in our session 0 mostly, we have in our game, God is dead and his throne is empty. Like, humans have stolen magic for themselves, and the conspiracy has sinister plans to create a skyscraper and ritual that will pierce through the veil. It just felt very, very 90s, very Vertigo. I was so happy with how that worked out. I was so shocked it worked as well as it did, because what worked for me was, just from session 0 today, we created an amazing setting and story. Everything feels so dark, gritty, delightfully intense. Even though we only had a short hour for roleplay, I had so much fun watching our players interact with each other and draw narrative turns from their playbooks. The Gauntlet players always impress me with their level of play, creativity, and generosity. Because I've only been playing since November, I'm so happy to be part of the community, and I feel like I see that people talk about this all the time, like it raises your standards of what gaming can be, and I definitely feel that way. But what I'm less sure about is I experimented a lot. I brought this up a little bit earlier. I experimented a lot with the game. I took bits and pieces from different designers I really admire. So mainly Sam Zimmerman, like I mentioned, for his tarot mechanics, but also from the work of Luke Jordan and Riley Rethel. They do a lot of great belonging outside belonging games like Tree Menu, Galactic, Venture. There are lots of great games. I'll include them in the links for sure. And so because of that, because it's just me pulling together all these mechanics I love, I'm not sure if it's going to work as well as intended in future sessions. I'm hoping it will work. I also did some other changes.
Lots of moving parts.
Lots of moving
of
parts.
Pieces, yes.
Yeah. It's not just, oh, that's cool, and like you're just pulling it together. I'm hoping it'll work. But mainly my takeaway is I'm really grateful that the community of Gauntlet provides so much support for indie gaming and indie designers.
Awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about the game?
An interesting thing is trying to get people to understand that they can have more GM narrative power is something that's difficult. Like, I tried to get that across in Black Buy, and it works to varying degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think people don't realize how much power you can have in a belonging outside belonging game. Like, you can just say, I want to use this weak move, so I'm going to create a scenario where this happens. And it's hard to get that across, right? Because people are so used to, I'm just reacting to whatever the DM tells me is going on.
It is. I would say that Lowell worked on our face-to-face group for years to get them to that level of understanding that they can take control of the narrative and, essentially what the signals are for that. It is a hard thing because reactive, and sometimes a player just wants to be reactive. It's one of those days where that's what they've got the energy for. But for those who are ready to roll out there and build that world, it's still negotiating boundaries. So everyone's always learning, right?
Yeah,
You're learning different people, you're learning a different system.
For the GM role that you talked about for Oathbreakers, like, is that an optional GM role? Or, because I think that's something I see a lot is, like the GM role, like players have so much authority in belonging outside belonging. So then when you do introduce a GM role, I think some players sort of just back into that, what they're used to. And you have something similar kind of in Billik Bayan, right? Of sort of an optional GM role. I guess from a design perspective, how do you balance that in belonging outside belonging?
Yeah, so I'm still totally working on that, to be honest. I'm trying to figure out how I can word the moves or give more examples that really show how much power the players have, because personally the reason why I like having a GM is I really enjoy the belonging outside belonging games, but I feel like you spend like 3 to 4 sessions just figuring it out, just like feeling it out. And definitely that is a great game for a lot of people. I know they enjoy the idle dreaming aspect. I know people who are neurodivergent prefer not having a GM because it's easier for them to focus on the game rather than if there's just one person with narrative power. But personally, I just feel like I want to get to do stuff. So I like creating BOB games that have a very specific idea. Like Billik Bayan is destroy the Corp and rebirth magic and save the city. And then Oathbreakers, so far it's kill the conspiracy, make sure they don't get to you first. Like, I always need to have that. So I think that helps because at least the GM can focus on that instead rather than the GM focusing on forcing the players into a particular story. I think it also helps by, in a design perspective, reminding the players you can always ask these questions and the GM doesn't have to answer those questions. Like, anybody can answer the question. You can answer the question. I'm also, like, as a GM, trying to remind people more often because I feel like in my last Billik Bayan game, when I ran it, I forgot to remind people in the last session, and I feel like that's how it didn't get to as satisfying a conclusion as I would like to have had it, because I forgot to remind people that you can be as awesome as you want and you don't have to depend on me for it. I will do my best, to make you as awesome as possible. That is my goal in life. But you can also jump in and tell me what you want to do. And I notice that people who play Belonging Outside Belonging who do that, who really like take the narrative, but also build on what other people are throwing out, those are the ones that have the best time in the system.
And I think that's always a thing with story games, is that there is a learning curve, even though they tend to feel easy to sit down and play to people who play them. There's just a different set of negotiations for control and what's going on. So, and what constitutes when you're done. And those sorts of things. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I remember, for me, it was so hard coming to PBTA, to Powered by the Apocalypse, from I just played D&D for lots of years, which I really love D&D. I'm never gonna, but now I can't go back. It's just a personal thing. I love it so much from afar. And I'm so glad it's there from afar. When I first started playing Masks, it was so painful from my head. I was like, what? So when does the GM act? What happens on a miss? What? Like, it was so difficult because the games I was introduced to first are very straightforward. You have very finite powers. You only have to think about what the character's gonna do for this number of seconds, right? Are they gonna hit, or are they gonna take 10 steps?
Exactly.
Right.
Yep. And you go from that to, negotiating a scene, and that's wow. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of an eye opener. So, and then even after you've made that jump, you play other games, and they're asking you to make different kinds of, reaction sets, or what constitutes a conversation, like when the back and forth happens. So it's just a really good, awesome learning experience. I play a lot, and yet I rarely feel like I'm an expert at anything I do on the Gauntlet. It's very, I'm just taking in so many new things all the time. I'm getting average at them, but I'm always enjoying myself. There's always people who are fabulous at them.
Right. Yeah, I feel like I've grown so much as a player because I was mostly a GM, and I always I didn't know how to play just one person as a player. It was so difficult. I really felt like I was struggling at first, but now I get to play with so many different people, and I really learned. But it's like you. I never feel like I'm an expert. I'm always just learning each session.
Scrambling to keep up. Okay, so my games played this last month. Off Gauntlet, I played Hearts of Wulin with the new Supernatural playbooks that have just been released in playtest.
I'm so jealous. Sorry, I couldn't help but interrupt.
They actually work really well, so it's been super exciting. So if you were on the Kickstarter, those are out there and available for you to go and take a look at. The other thing that I played was 13th Age, of course. We played our Fate Homebrew Ocean City Interface, and we played Monster of the Week. On Gauntlet this month, I've played #iHunt, which I'm really enjoying. It's good to get back to classic Fate in some ways. This isn't classic, they've got different skills, but it's just got a different flow that I really enjoy, and it's super well suited to this game. Very impressed with this one so far. Our Masks game has transitioned over into the playtest of Power Beyond Doubt.
Ooh, the adult version, right?
Yeah, and I am really digging what I'm seeing here with Power Beyond Doubt. Very excited to work this through. I've got another 6 sessions, and the stories are amped up. Really good. I also played Brindlewood Bay, which is a game that is available to those who are Patreons of the Gauntlet. Played Apocalypse World Burned Over, that was packed over for Star Wars with Rich's Star Wars Saturdays.
I was so jealous of that. I couldn't get about that.
You just gotta be there with your finger on the trigger right away if you want to get into a Star Wars game. That's just the rule. So let's see, Once More Into the Void, which is a game that, someone ran that was just fabulous. So it was a play test, and it was super fun. It's a game that uses the Firebrands system, and played a fabulous game that was very much like a Star Trek game, or probably more Mass Effect kind of game, because you're heading into one last big adventure. Big attempt to fix all the things. So, and it was very fun. And the other game that I played this month was Changeling the Lost. But today I'm going to talk about Brindlewood Bay because it kind of blew my mind. I didn't expect for it to, but we got into it. And what Brindlewood Bay is, It is a PBTA system that's for playing the sort of mystery stories that are called cozies, where you know that there's going to be a solution and it will all be handled up and your world will go back to normal. In this one, it's specifically designed to hearken to Murder, She Wrote style mysteries, and there's an ensemble of Jessicas, not just one Jessica. So the ensemble tends to run more towards Golden Girls and Jessica and about every other spirited retiree that you loved on television. So your character belongs to the Murder Mavens, a mystery book club, and they're great fans of the works of a author, Amanda Delacourt, and her Gold Crown Mystery Series. So that's sort of like what it's built around. It gives you a sense of the flavor. You live in a sort of East Coast town that's called Brindlewood Bay, but that's not all. The thing about it is that things are going to get darker here. You kind of know that. You start getting hints. And the game pitches that eventually these ladies will be facing off against dark elder god horrors out there that are pushing on the borders of their cozy little world. And so it starts gradually with little hints and a few bad dreams, which is where I'm at right now. But I'm like, woo, shivering with excitement because I can see the rest of it coming. Now, I want to tell you that the game, Brindlewood Bay, is by Jason Cordova. If you want to take a look at it, you can back the Patreon. It's a backer reward, and you can get there at patreon.com/gauntlet. I am, however, not typically a person who's all about, go with the company store stuff, but this is really excellent. So let me tell you about what worked for me. Sometimes you pick up a text and it just exudes strong feelings for its subject. Brindlewood Bay is totally swathed in deep affection for the genre. The characters, every little bit of it is a touch of someone who has watched so much of this sort of television and really loved it and leaned into it. You get to choose styles that are just the Hollywood tropes for older women. Hippy dippy, Debbie Zornak, speed walking, all the cardigans, just funny little phrases that are like, yep, I know exactly that person from those TV shows that I've watched. It's just standard stereotypes for older women. Some of the instant touchstones, they give you, with a little phrase, so much to go with. And mind you, they aren't bringing mechanics. This is really just there for you to set your sense of your character. And then there are hallmark activities that you choose that are like what your characters do that are cozy activities, cozy moments that you're going to build into your episode. So when they go to show you at your domestic finest, this is what you're going to be doing. Those are things like gardening, collecting, baking, fundraising. Again, no mechanics. This is just an agreed upon set of narrative conventions that you're going to use because TV uses those little hallmarks. So smart. So smart. And then when you finally do get to mechanics, those ones that you have is each of the Mavens get to choose a move, and all of them are named after male TV investigators and private eyes. So like I have Cole Seavers, and I can make like one fabulous athletic action per session. Dale Cooper, where they have significant weird dreams on occasion. Very, very tied to TV and to those little things that make a murder mystery or an investigator special. Very clever. The other thing that I really like about it is that the world grows slightly more menacing as you go. And that actually solves all the problems I've ever had with games about Elder God stories. Because you start out with a funny, bright, cozy world, and you're capable and you're beloved in your little, eccentric town. But as you go, all the meddling that you do to solve the mysteries, those missteps reveal and start to stir up the darkness. And that's so good because you've got these stakes. It's really neat. The other thing that I like is that the murder investigations can be ongoing concurrently. And so you essentially sort of have to choose what you're going to look into. And each mystery has a rating. So you're trying to get clues that help you exceed or meet that rating, which is the main mechanic. But it doesn't really feel like that way because what you're doing is you're asking questions and setting up scenes to find some information. You're just trying to get enough of it so that you, and this is part of this is the actual mechanics of the game for the mystery itself, is you get enough of those clues together, you and the other Mavens sit down and you figure out who did it. And so your clues aren't just these rando things that you're pulling up. You're actually trying to pinpoint things so that you have a story that you can build. And I've seen it where we aren't rushing to solve those mysteries. We're rushing to find like a sensible path to a solution. And it's very funny to watch the mavens who have different theories about what's going on, looking into different things. So it's pretty good. But I love that because you don't have to guess one right answer. There's none of that sort of draggy pull that you get when you're trying to understand if you've got a red herring or if you've misunderstood something and try to figure out what it is that's actually the answer. No, this is you guys figuring it out. And you're going to do it together, and it's all based on the kind of things you go and look at. So you get to have drama to find the mystery that you want to solve. It's very fun.
Yeah, and another thing I love about the clue is there are a couple of moves where the mavens, the players, are the ones who offer what a clue is that they find, right?
Yes.
So
yeah,
to help
exactly.
tie things in.
Yep.
Yeah, like you said, so it avoids so much of that frustration.
Yeah, exactly. And it has that thing of the thing that you're interested in or the going theory or what you think would be fun, like would be a stumper or something like that. You could get that in there. Build your own stingers into the program. So that is very wonderful. If there's anything that I'm less sure about, the game definitely is going to take at least 4 sessions to go from cozy to horror, I think. So you're going to need, this is not a one-shotable. So if you play only 1-shots or 2-shots, this game may not be for you, and I'm sorry, because it's really good. But we're heading into, session 3 of 8, and I'm so glad we've got some time to take this path, because I'm enjoying these bright moments, and I'm looking forward to the eventual revelation of just what's out there. I do share much of the affection that the designer does for this genre. He's written it with a keen eye to the detail, and I have no idea how this translates if you aren't familiar with this source material. And I mean, my niece, I know she would have no idea what this is referring to, so.
That's actually like a good point, because when, like, I love Murder, She Wrote, but I have very faint, fuzzy memories because we don't have that same sort of like syndication. We don't have Murder, She Wrote playing all the time here in Manila. So, but when I read the game, I was like, I have to run this immediately. But I agree with you. It feels like it's really essential because it's not like some PPTA games where the genre is built into the moves. Here, it's more like the genre are suggestions. Like, I didn't understand half of the fashion descriptions. I had to look it up.
But it's the thing is that like the moves will definitely get you through the mystery and all of that. But I don't think you'll have that sense of absolute falling in love unless it's you as a group build that up.
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
really a feeling of affection for the characters and the world that comes through in the careful choices that have been made through if you share those things. But it might be there. It's just I can't tell because I am so familiar with it, and every little word kind of, gives me a little tear in my eye. I'm like, oh yeah, that so good. Or so mediocre, but I still loved it when I was a kid. That kind of thing. So, which is just as good as so good. The other thing is that that game is all exclusively female characters, which may turn off some groups, and also always sets you at a risk of having someone play that very badly and it feeling horrible.
Yeah.
But the person who thinks an older woman is just someone who says, oh dear, with a quavery voice or something.
Right.
But usually you don't run into that.
Right, and I think the XP triggers that Jason built in sort of help get around that a little bit, right? Because some of the XP triggers are like, act like someone half my age, or show them I still got it, right? Yep. So, I mean, you still have the XP trigger of dote on someone, which is what we think of.
Which is a fabulous default.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that they really do have that sort of sense of pluckiness and sauciness and having your say kind of thing that is just, to me, I read the whole system and I love it. And I feel the love in the making. And I've been enjoying playing it so much. We played 3-hour sessions and they feel like they go by in a blink of an eye.
Yeah, super fast.
It just feels so natural and stuff. And I really like that the elder gods here are actual threat to a world that we built. Because the world wasn't built for elder gods. It was built for 3 or 4 spunky older ladies. And they're having the time of their life. And oh my gosh, now this is a threat when they pop up, and I just love that so much.
Well, and talking about like the threat that the elder gods pose on that, which is a wild way to start a sentence. But, like with the game being about these older women, how does it handle the threat to them? Like, you could enter some dark territory, I guess, because they're just older women going around investigating these mysteries. How does it handle that, or is it just kind of up to the GM to run that intelligently?
It builds in what I can see as a set of warnings that things are coming and omens. And then the other thing is that we actually have some sort of supernatural almost moves that where they like have their faith in Amanda Delacourt or in essentially that gold crown mysteries, which is part of it, and that actually protects them for a while. Jamila, I know that you've seen it as a GM. Is there anything else that you would say about that, what is coming for the approach for the older one?
It's called the crown move. What our investigators have is they can choose from a certain number of flashbacks that they can have. So they can put on the golden crown, because it says in the book itself, don't be afraid to go hard when things get really bad. There are two moves called the day move and the night move. The day move is when things are less stressful. So we've only had day moves so far, but there are night moves where things can get more intense. And this is more likely where someone will get thrown off a cliff by a cultist or something similar, or like Majestica Fletcher almost was driven off of a cliff in a remote controlled car. I love that episode. Anyway, so a similar thing. So what happens is the player will mark on the crown. They'll choose from a list. So these are things like your fondest memory of your children or the fondest memory of your partner who passed away. Because the assumption is that your partner did pass away and you're a widow. Though one of our players, his character, she was a beard instead, so he lives somewhere else instead. But anyway, so they just check on that particular flashback they're going to have, and it's so cool because the book recommends that you say that it's an alternative timeline. So in this alternative reality, she really did die, or things really did go badly, but we see it go back in time into a different reality. So it's really cool. I've been surprised. We've already had the Golden Crown be used, I think it's 3 times already, right? Between our 3 characters. And the thing is, so those are the Golden Crown moves, but then you have like the darker crown moves. So once you run out of those, you get into, your investigator falls into the void and gets closer and closer to this Cthulhu darkness. And they may even become part of that dark conspiracy instead if they check off too many of those. So dear old ladies become more and more wrapped up in this Cthulhu-like core, which is really cool. I can't wait for us to have to get to that point. So I'm going to start pushing hard next session.
No! I want to stay cozy.
Though the game does stress it's mostly cozy. Like, it's mostly cozy. And then just these sharp pangs of like, oh no!
Yep, exactly. It is got some interesting structure going on there. I'm looking forward to it. So, Robert, tell us about the games that you played.
Yeah, so off Gauntlet, I played Working for the Corp, which is the game I'm going to be talking about, and Alone Among the Stars, which is a single-player game that I've kind of fallen into. It has a lot of hacks on itch.io. I've been falling into this single-player game hole for a while now. On Gauntlet, I play Changeling Lost PBTA hack, Trophy Gold, Trophy Dark, Pasión de las Pasiones, Bellic Beyond, Bluebeard's Bride, Monster Hearts. I finally played Monster Hearts for the first time. That's been kind of amazing.
The first time?
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yes, I feel like I have to snap for some reason instead of clap. I don't know why. How was the first time? How was it? I'm so jealous every time it's someone first time.
It was very good. I was so anxious and nervous about it. I think Sherry and I have actually talked about this like a couple times. Because it's just...
Why?
So... I also mentioned Bluebeard's Bride, and both Bluebeard's Bride and Monster Hearts, to me, were games that, like, I just felt like, I don't belong here in the... I don't know, I'm very new to the whole indie RPG scene anyway, but both of those, like, represented games to me that were, like, I don't identify as queer, so Monster Hearts isn't, like, I don't want to, like, offend anybody, or something like that. And so...
Okay.
It was very hard to step into those. And so, of course, because it's so hard, I decided, of course, I'm going to play Bluebeard's Bride and Monster Hearts in the same month, in the same week.
Yes. Let's do it.
Yeah, so, just jump into the deep end. The game gets crazy. Like, I'm glad that I played Pasión de las Pasiones before, because in a lot of ways that sort of reminds me of what our Monster Hearts game is turning into, where it's just like...
Awesome. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, it's just craziness. And I'm playing as the mortal.
You are. You're so perfect. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Is this? Are these videos up? Like, is there a way to watch them?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to watch Robert being the mortal for sure. That's what I'm doing tomorrow.
Yeah,
oh
and
my gosh.
So the only other thing I want to talk about with Monster Hearts is just like how important, and like I said, I was very anxious and nervous about that. But like the group that we have, and just in general on the Gauntlet, like I feel very safe, and it was like, I don't know if I could have jumped in and played this at like a Indie Games on Demand at Origins or Gen Con or something. Like it was really important to me having that group of people that I trust. Like we always talk about in Gauntlet games, I could always drop the X card. Like, you know, we have lines and veils, but there's also like a constant check-in that I think is really important. And so just constantly checking in with other players and being like, hey, is it cool if we go down this road? Because it's getting kind of weird. And like, yeah, okay. That has been really important and has helped a lot with my understanding and playing of that game. But the game that I wanted to highlight and talk about today is Working for the Corp, which is a cyberpunk descended from the Queen for the Queen hack by Ken Davidson. Instead of For the Queen, where you are going along with a queen and taking her to some other land, you are working for a corporation, and it's very cyberpunk. So there are runners who are going to come to your corporation to steal some sort of secrets. You know, they're going to do some kind of hacking or something along those lines. And then it basically comes down at the end to, do you defend your corporation? It's very, very heavy with the capitalism, corporation thing, which is kind of very prevalent right now. That works nicely.
It's really something we're always thinking about.
Yeah, especially right now. And so that's something that worked really well for me. The game, it's given me room to like explore a lot of things that were in the news like in the early 90s. Growing up, you know, I remember always being deathly afraid, like being, 8 or 9 years old and hearing all this news about acid rain.
Oh, that's right.
And it's just like these things that like as a kid, I always thought like, oh no, that's going to be a huge problem. I have to deal with acid rain when I grow up. I feel like a lot of the cards and the prompts in this game really lend themselves toward those sort of things that you remember of, like, I guess I would call them like failed doomsdays of things that were like the hot topic for a short amount of time, then just kind of faded away. And so I've played this a few times now, and every time we kind of fall into one of those where it's like, oh, acid rain is the big deal, or you get into like some weird AI stuff. And I think that's another area that it works really well. I work in IT. I'm a computer programmer as my day job. The cyberpunk prompts in this game, you can take them like really, really crazy cyberpunk, or you can just be like, no, my boss is a jerk because he assigned me like too many tasks and I have too many help desk tickets and he just sucks.
Wow, I'm getting like war flashbacks. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's been really good. It worked really well. I played a lot of it 2-player with my friend and coworker and fellow Gauntleteer, Julie Rogers, and we both work in IT, so a lot of it has been like this bouncing off of, our day job stuff. Like there are some prompts in the game that are like, hey, your boss is a jerk. What does he do that bothers you so much? And then we're like, well, what does our boss actually do? And so, like weaving in those real world prompts is something different than like For the Queen, where it is usually a fantastical game. Most of us aren't in charge of escorting queens around, so that's a game that, it does always go very heavy fantasy, where this one it usually stays very grounded in a way that I really like. Something I'm not really sure about is then kind of taking that a different way of, I don't know how well it works if you don't have any kind of background in tech-y stuff or, in IT. I don't think it's necessarily like geared directly toward people that work in IT, but I think that definitely helps. some of the prompts come across like if you don't have much of a background in IT or you don't really consume a lot of cyberpunk media, they might be sort of difficult to work in. But for the most part, I think it's been okay in that regard. The only other thing is just you have to be very careful and work this game with a lot of trust. Like I said, you can very easily pull in a lot of like current politics and current events and stuff like that. And so you just have to always be careful with that.
Mm-hmm. Right, because some people play to avoid these things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so in a lot of ways, this is a game that, you know, you can draw in a lot of that stuff. Like it sings when you are drawing in on that stuff. But I think you just have to be constantly aware that like not everybody is going to sit at the table and play a game to hear about current events. You know, in a lot of cases, like you said, they're kind of playing to avoid that stuff. And I totally get that. I think just a constant check-in, like, you know, in between prompts even, or liberal use of the X card, which has always been like a very For the Queen staple. I think it's one of the first games I ever saw that gamified the X card, where, you know, it has the X card baked into the rules. It tries to very much normalize the X card of just, hey, if you don't like this prompt, just X card it. You can do the next one. It's fine. That's also another thing to really keep in mind is you can always X card any of these cards. Other than that, yeah, like I also really like the artwork. I think the game was designed very well.
Oh, can I plug my friend? Because actually they were the ones who... Duwada na Manila or Sin Posadas, they were the ones who designed this particular... Like, they did the graphics, they put it together. Yeah, so it's Duwata, as in DIWATAMNL.itch.io. And they make a lot of great games. They also have the same great aesthetic. But yeah, I agree. Like, I feel like when Sin and Ken worked together for working for the Corp, it really made the game sing. Because I saw work for the Corp before it got this facelift. It was already great. But I think Sin brought a lot to it.
You know, I watched this game for a while and I really wanted to play it. And then when they added that art, like, I hate to be one of those people that's just like all about the art or, you know, the design. But then like when they did add the art, I remember like looking at it and like, wait, is this a new game? Where did this come from? And I was like, oh no, it is just, it's the same game. It just has a new presentation and it added so much. Just the general aesthetic.
Hey listeners, Jason here. I want to let you know that Brindlewood Bay is now available in the Gauntlet's $6 Patreon feed. Brindlewood Bay is a Powered by the Apocalypse game about a group of elderly women solving murder mysteries in and around the namesake town. As they investigate these crimes, they become increasingly aware of the activities of a dark cult called the Midwives of the Fragrant Void, and will have to come up with a plan to stop them. The game is basically Murder, She Wrote meets The Shadow over Innsmouth, and we think you're going to love it. Your $6 pledge in February gets you everything you need to play Brindlewood Bay. The core rules, including a file for printing them as a zine, character sheets and other play aids, plus 5 mysteries: Dad Overboard, All Hallows Scream, The Great Brindlewood Bay Bake Off, Jingle Bell Shock, and A Murder Most Mucky. So head over to patreon.com/gauntlet and make a $6 pledge to get Brindlewood Bay. Keep your pledge active and you'll also get new issues of our magazine Codex every month. Thanks.
Robert, you've been working on a pretty cool project. Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, geez, where do I even start? The part of it that I've published, you know, I've created these lists of basically every single solo game and every single duet game. And when I say duet game, I mean games that are designed specifically for 2 players. And when I say solo, I mean specifically for 1 player, because there's a lot of games that are like 1 to many players or 2 to 5 players, things like that. I'm really focused on specifically solo games and specifically duet games, which I started because I wanted to highlight these games in general. I have a few videos recorded of solo games and a few more coming that are duet games that I plan on publishing on my channel Lark Brigade, which I don't even know how I got. The name of that is so weird.
I was about to ask, actually.
Because
I'm imagining an entire group of larks. Like, are they...
Yeah, it started off... I'm a weird person that really likes, like, wordplay and alliteration. And I started off with Are You Afraid of the Dark, the old Nickelodeon show. And I'm like, what
No, really?
what rhymes with dark? And then I ended up with like Lark. And then I ended up with like Brigade of the Lark because Brigade rhymes with afraid. And then I ended up with Lark Brigade.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it turned into this whole thing. And so originally it started off as just hey, I want to make some videos. And like, well, if I'm going to make videos of these solo games and these duet games, I need to know which ones are out there. And there's really not a good way on itch.io to find. Like, I feel like the discovery of the website is kind of lacking.
Not great. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I just took it upon myself to literally go through every single game. There's kind of an undocumented feature where you can sort the list by oldest first. And so it was just like scrolling down through all these instead of like finding scrolling all the way to the bottom, which would be impossible. It took some time, definitely.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, and so I started off just adding all those to collections on itch.io, and then kind of took it a step further where then I like pulled those collections out into their own Google Sheets. Then that kind of spread on Twitter, and a lot of people were really excited about it. So then I just kept working on it. I don't have the exact numbers, but I think like both lists are over 300 games each. Like there are just a crazy amount of games out there. It is very timely because there are a lot of people who are possibly working from home right now or can't go out as much as they want to. And actually, I think recently, like yesterday, Roll20 even went down because the sheer amount of traffic that they're seeing of new players.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
They actually even just posted something today in Italian because they have so many new Italian players because the entire country of Italy is kind of on lockdown because of coronavirus.
Wow.
And
yeah.
so like a lot of people are turning to this, turning to tabletop role-playing games. And there are a lot of like really crazy good single player and duet games. If you only have yourself or you only have one other person, there's so many good games out there to play and so many that are free. Like that's the other thing is there are so many games that somebody put together and just threw out into the void as, hey, this is part of a game jam or something. And they're so worthwhile. Even if nothing else, you just read them.
There are a lot of I have very strong itch.io feelings for sure. There's so many good solo games. There's so many good duet games because a lot of these people, I feel like they want to create these very reflective, creative, interesting games. I'm sure the answer changes depending on the mood, but what's your current favorite solo or duet game?
Probably my favorite right now. There's a whole series of games, and actually it was part of Zine Quest, but Alone Among the Stars has been a big favorite of mine. There's been a bunch of hacks for it because the basic mechanics of it are you sort of draw a random number of playing cards and you flip them over and sort of just narrate discovering this planet and what you find on the planet. And it's very heavily influenced by No Man's Sky, which is just a very cozy sort of space exploration game.
Right.
And that's actually, so Alone Among the Stars was the game that sort of made me realize hey, maybe I should start recording this and just throwing this out there. Maybe somebody would find it entertaining because I've been using it to almost run my own little Star Trek series. I do it in a very space exploration way that is reminiscent of Star Trek. I really just want to highlight these games and get them more publicity because I think there are so many good single player games. And also another shout out to Adam Coble, who has been running streams of Ironsworn, which is a PBTA game that you can play solo. And he's been doing a lot of streams of that, which also sort of made me realize hey, people are watching single player games. That's a cool thing you can watch. And yeah, I mean, I've watched a couple of those streams that he's done, and those are it's very interactive because, you're just there by yourself. There's nothing really pushing you. It reminds me a lot of being a kid and just coming up with these weird, crazy stories in my head. And it's been very fun. That, and then also going to the duet games, there's a huge amount of, hopefully I don't butcher this word, epistolary games of just letter writing. There's so many letter writing games on itch.io.
They're so good.
There's been multiple game jams for it. so many have so many really good prompts. And so I've been playing a lot of those. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many good games out there, but they're just so hard to find is the problem. And so I really hope that a lot of people, continue checking out these lists, and especially like the solo games. And there's so many good game jams out there, I think, also for the solo games. Duet games, I think there's been a few game jams for those.
Right, but mostly solo, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. So do the tags work on itch.io? Like if someone types in 1-player or 2-player game, does it actually show up? Or
yeah, so that definitely helps. And the tags are useful on top of, so like, I don't want to like talk about it too much, but like on top of the layer that I built of like, hey, when you have a list of here are all of the single player games, then the tags are like super important. Because then I'm looking at a single player game and the tags are sci-fi and space and cosmic horror. Right, so then you kind of have a better idea of what you're looking for. But if you're just looking for single-player games, the tags it's up to you to put them in. So somebody might put in 1-player, somebody might put in single-player, somebody might put in solo. So there's so many different possible tags.
I have a hard time remembering the consistency of my tags. So I was like, oh no. Should we do a public service announcement?
Yeah.
Please help Robert find your game.
It's so important. Like even just outside of tagging the number of players, putting that in the description. Like I almost want to do this whole public announcement of like, please put in like in the description like how many players your game is. There's so many. Now, granted, it did help me find a lot of cool games because there are so many games where I'm just like, I have no idea who this is for. I have to actually just read the game.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would just download the game and read the game to figure out, is it a solo game? Like, it sounds like it might be.
Some people don't even put, like, a full description on the store page. Okay, this will become my mission, Robert. I will take this on. Like, every week, just to remind people.
It's funny that you bring this up because you are actually one of the few people that's very, very, very good about it.
I try.
When I started this whole project, like, I kind of feel like an archaeologist in some way, where I'm just like going through the layers of itch.io games. And I remember finding some of the early games that you did. And I was like, oh, well, that's nice. Like they put in there like how many players it is. And then it's so fun like watching your evolution, I guess, as a game designer. That was because I was already familiar with you before I started this project. So then I was going through and it's like the first few ones were like, hey, I'm Jamie and this is my game. And then like, now your recent ones are like, no, this is my game. Like, this is a really cool thing. And before it was just like, oh yeah, maybe play this. I don't know. So it's been really fun.
Oh my gosh, I feel so seen. It's true though, it's true. Because like I really felt like I was talking to the void the first few games. Like, so I was like, okay, hi, person who doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You can try this out.
And then it's also so fun, like, having that experience of going through every game on itch. Like, there's definitely, like, chunks of time where it's just like, no, for, like, 2 months, every game was about giant robots. Like, that's all there was.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because the Sad Mecha Jam exploded. And
yeah.
And then even after the jam, people were like, I need to make a robot Mecha Jam.
Yeah, there are these like really interesting layers of games where it's just like, no, for like 2 months, all of itch.io was just obsessed with this topic. So that's been really fun to see also. I mean, there was like a period of time there where I was just like, I had to take really long breaks because like the sheer number of giant robot games were just like melding together in my head and I was losing track.
Oh gosh.
But it's really fun, and I'm continuing working on that. I check itch.io almost every day for new games. There's so many new games always being posted on there. And I've also started branching out and trying to find games on other sites. So I'm working on some lists for like DriveThruRPG. The hard one that I'm working on is a list of also solo and duet games, but just like games that aren't really published on like storefronts, or they're on like their own independent storefronts.
Wow.
Which is, difficult, but I just want to highlight these solo and duet games. Like I think it's just really important to me that people know that these are out there, and I really love the duet games. Like I said, they're just so focused and personal, and it's a really intense experience. I know, Sherry, you and Lowell talked a few episodes ago about Night's Black Agent's solo ops.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe you can share some of that, but like it is just a very intense experience.
It is. There's no spotlight sharing. It's entirely, it's, the two of you are it. And in the case of the Night's Black Agents, it's the GM who's setting the obstacles and it's the agent trying to get past them. And both of us are, essentially leaning in, trying to create that experience and negotiate those things. And it is like inherently these are games that are it's you. And it's them. It's 100% your attention. So, again, where can they find your list?
So right now, you can find the lists are linked on my Twitter account, which is twitter.com/larkbrigade. I also bought the domain ttrpg.tools, and so I plan on building that out and linking to those there, because I'm also creating I look for any idea that people come up with, like, man, I wish I had, an online tool that helped me play games this way. So I'm always, like, kind of looking for those.
Okay.
So if anybody has any ideas, hit me up on my Twitter at LarkBrigade.
Okay, that sounds awesome. All right, listeners, we're going to our third segment. It's Giving Me Life. So, Giammi, what is giving you life these days?
Well, because I'm obsessive, I started rereading the Hellboy comics for the... Everything's about games, right? I'm such a Capricorn. I've been really enjoying rereading the comics. They're super gorgeous. Mike Mignola does such amazing work. They're the art is so evocative and so beautiful. The thing is, my partner is kind of upset because I keep talking like a bad guy from Hellboy. Like, I keep talking in Bible quotes or prophecy. Like, I'll say, like, Matthew will say, can I borrow your phone? And I'm like, take my phone. This is my body. Do with it as you will. Like, he's like, why are you talking like this? Like, because I've been reading Hellboy for hours. That's why.
It's just how you parse a sentence now.
Yeah.
With heavy syllables of significance.
Yeah, for sure. And
awesome.
And out of all the characters to relate to, it's always the bad guys. Oh, they're so awesome. So I've been quoting a lot of the bad guys, Baba Yaga and stuff like that.
Awesome. And Robert, what's giving you life?
What's giving me life right now is Star Trek, like just in general. Picard is the new series that just started.
Good.
It is so good. And I watched the first episode, and then like I got really, really busy at work and like didn't come around back to it. And then Jamie put out Once More Into the Void, and had a lot of Picard callbacks in it. And then also Jim Crocker of the Gauntlet put up some games in Star Trek Adventures that I managed to get into all of those. And so I've just been like on this Star Trek kick. So I got back into, I've been watching through Picard, and then like that's made me like go back and start rewatching Deep Space Nine, which is my personal favorite.
Good.
Deep Space Nine is just so good. So I've just been on this whole Star Trek kick lately, and the short form fiction level of Star Trek is just something that I just really love.
Grew up on it, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in giving me life, for me, it is... I am looking forward to this 1-2 punch that's coming up. Animal Crossing New Horizons is coming out. And like a week later, it's Persona 5 Royal Edition.
I know.
And
how could they do it so close to each other?
It is unkind, and yet as a masochist, I will take on those
both?
duties.
Are you serious?
Of course.
Oh my gosh. I had to choose. I'm going to go with Animal Crossing first because
cozy.
When Persona 5 first came out, I turned my partner into a widow. I didn't talk to him for like 4 weeks. He kept trying to talk to me, and I'd be like, like, I would only talk to him when we would eat, and even then I would still kind of play. But, so I can't do both. But what made you decide to get both, Sherry?
Well, the truth of the matter is Animal Crossing, it's going to be a glut where you're getting going first, and then after a while you get to that thing where it's just daily maintenance. You get in there, you do your little things, and that stuff, and it's just a little while. It's calming and cozy and lovely, and it's a good way to check in on your friends who are also playing. Mm-hmm. Persona is an obsession. And, that's the thing is, so it will fill up every spare moment that you have. if you have it. And so I love that about Persona 5. Listeners, that's our show. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you want to hear more or find more about the things that we've mentioned, you can find us on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG. We also have a Patreon, so patreon.com/gauntlet. And most importantly, our website, www.gauntlet-rpg.com, where you can find information about our events, our forums, and our online play aids. Thank you, and have an awesome week.